G'day everybody and welcome back to Words from the Scribe. It has been a while, but I'm excited to announce that we are back on, and today's guest is Alan Stevens, so please make him welcome, and you can do that sitting behind your screens and clapping, and I'm sure he'll feel the love from here. But just let us know, Alan, and for the people at home, what service do you provide?
My services is to, well, first of all, thanks for inviting me along today to have a chat.
Happy to.
Excellent. My service is about helping people to be able to read other people, to connect with them more effectively and build stronger relationships in all areas of their life, whether that be in business to increase sales or to improve their negotiation skills, or whether it is with sales, with families raising their children, or just couples building a stronger relationship.
Okay, fantastic. So you would be you'd be quite the expert at body language, that sort of thing, I imagine?
Body language is one part of it. Body language, the facial features that tell us how somebody likes to think and process, their personality, the micro expressions, the little twitches on the face that give away their emotions, and a bit of NLP as well, knowing how to speak to the person once you've read them, and then how to monitor what you're getting back from them.
Of course, yeah. It's well, no, it's interesting and it's timely that we're having this discussion. I can't remember the name of the author, but there's a book called What Everyone Is Saying, and I just finished reading that probably a month ago. It's written by a guy who used to be involved with the FBI, that sort of stuff. But it's really interesting just talking about all these little, you would have heard the word, just these little tells, like little things to do with person's face or just the way that they're tapping their foot and just all these little details that you hadn't thought of. But it's interesting because towards the end of it, he said even then, like he would probably estimate he has at best a 50-50 chance of being able to work out whether somebody, whether their words were congruent with the truth or whether they were making stuff up. And he said, even with that expertise, it can be difficult to fully tell if somebody's actually, if they're actually telling the truth or not.
Well, that's it. Depends on how much you try and focus into, if you look at their face and you're just trying to look for the expressions, you're missing the body language. So you have a soft gaze, you look at the whole view, and you'll be surprised what you can actually pick up. But you'll get an indication, but the thing is, make sure that indicator wasn't just a twitch on the face. You've got to look for them in clusters. You've got to look to see if they're congruent with what's being said at the time. So there's a few little techniques in there. So you can raise that level up a bit. But I start, first of all, because that's more about lie detection. I'm all about being a truth seeker. So not just using it to catch somebody out who's telling lies, but to understand their emotions. And where I start at the very beginning is your facial features, as I mentioned before. Very few people work in that area. But if you think you lift weights, you're going to build muscles up. We also know that what we feel inside, we express outwardly. So we pull expressions with anger, contempt, disgust, happiness, sadness, those sort of things. And then if you pull an expression over and over, you're working the muscles in your face. The ridges and crevices that leaves, that is then the history of how you like to think and process, and that's your personality.
Interesting. So that's touching on psychosomatics, is it? Same sort of thing?
Well, no, it's really back into the science of the body, the muscle movements, the biology side of things. Because if you really concentrate in, if I do that, you'll notice that my eyebrows pull together and you get these little grooves. If I do that over and over, those grooves are going to get longer. And when I'm at rest, they'll be even more noticeable. So the facial features tell me the person. It doesn't tell me the character. It tells me how they like to think and how they like to process and how to give them information when I'm talking to them. But it doesn't tell me what they're thinking about or what they're processing. That's why when I talk to them, I know how to change my language to match the way that they need to be spoken to. And then I've got the body language and expressions. So I watch those. I then get the feedback that I need to tell me, have I read them right? Is there something else going on? Is there something that could be emotional? It's something they want to keep down but don't want to share? Or are they a con artist? Are they out to lie to people all the time? So you're putting more information together. There's more to observe, and then for more of the story that you can see. So it takes that 50% then up higher again when you put it all together.
Okay. So, I mean, all this stuff that you're sharing with us now, Alan, this has obviously been taken through years of your own research and study and professional development and that. But just again, for the people at home, like what's your background? How did you get to be at this point now? Tell us a bit about your background.
Well, school of life to start with.
Yeah.
Um, when I was 23, I left Sydney and came to Newcastle. I was put in charge of a group of men who were all older than me.
Mm-hmm.
My second in charge was 38. This was in the old telecom.
Oh, yeah.
And we turned that into the highest performing group within Australia, within our particular area. When I left the group, took my redundancy in 91,
Mm-hmm.
half of my staff wanted to resign and come with me. So I'd learned over that period of time how to work with people and build them up so that they became leaders themselves. And they worked hard, but at the same time, they were loyal because they felt like they were valued. They had a place and they belonged and they could contribute. So that was the first level. And then in my mid-30s, I joined the surf club at Nobby's and became a patrol captain at first.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they gave me everybody. I found out why they wanted me in that role. They gave me everybody that nobody else wanted. We turned that into the patrol of the year.
Yeah.
And because we did that, they then got me to be the club captain. I kept that patrol together, and one of the guys, I moved him up to be the to be the patrol captain. And again, they won the awards that year without me being involved in the selections. So it proved how bringing them together. So I was getting a lot of experience in building teams and developing leaders, not just
Mm-hmm.
managing, but leading people up. Because my belief has always been, if you are a good leader, you're helping people to come up and be able to do your job, to make yourself redundant. Because if you're not making yourself redundant, you're stuck in that role and you can't go anywhere. But if you make yourself redundant by lifting them up and the people above you notice that, then you get promoted. It's the only way you can move forward, is by lifting everybody else up. And in my late 30s, my first wife left and I had 3 boys to raise on my own. So from being the youngest in business to the least experienced in the surf club to now being right out of my depth, raising 3 boys. So that was the beginning of it. I've worked with body language all through that period. I started with working on NLP in the mid-90s. I went on to being my master's and going back and repeating that in the they call it the noughties, it's early 2000s. And then I'd had been working with psychometric profiling, Myers-Briggs and DISC and all those programs. But I found when I was working with a company that taught currency trading, none of their students were making any money. And so we profiled them before we did the course. And after we started training, we realized they weren't the profiles that we came out with. So I realized that they tried to second guess the questions. And some of them said to me, well, we just tried to figure out what sort of personality we needed to be a good trader. And I'm going, no, you put your money on the table, your personality is going to come right back out again, no matter what you try and do.
That's it.
So I need to know that. Somebody said to me one day, you ever looked at reading faces? And I thought, that's interesting. So then I trained with, I found Paul Ekman, who was a psychologist in America who did all the research on the micro expressions, those little twitches in the face. And then trained with his group, found a lady who worked with the facial features and trained with her. Now, originally I thought facial features, old phrenology system, look at a person's face and say they were a criminal or whatever. That's rubbish. And luckily the way they trained with this, they were talking about personality, not character. And so when I realized that it was a muscle movements, the development of the face, because if you concentrate really hard, your eyes are going to come in because if you focus in front of you. So the positioning of the different features of the face, the ridges and crevices on top of that, it tells me how somebody likes to think. As I said, put the language with it, know how to talk to them, use the micro expressions and body language as the feedback to say whether I've got it right. So I've been a massage therapist in the past. I've been an aromatherapist. I've worked with colour therapies and sound therapies. And in fact, I introduced colour and sound therapies to the Singapore hospital where they were working with kids with ADHD. And so I've been a student all my life of doing one modality after another and realising that I finally found the 4 that really put together a great program, which I then called it Rapid Trait Profiling, which was picked up by Disney Films and Gillette in 2016, and I hired to go over and speak on their behalf at their Star Wars launch. And I've been using the same skills to train the federal police, and now working with businesses of all sizes and parents and school teachers.
Oh, fantastic. So I suppose people should just stop trying to act when they talk to you, Alan. They should just relax because it's going to come out sooner or later.
I get everyone goes, they're worried about it. My old elevator speech was, when people ask me what I do, I say, oh, I just clear rooms. They say, what, you clean rooms? I said, no, I clear rooms. And they go, what? I said, well, when people find out what I do, they all run out of the room. But when they find out why and how I do it, they all come back and bring their family and friends,
Yeah.
their colleagues.
Yeah.
And as I said, people say, do I turn this off? Well, I do turn the lie detection side of it off if I'm at a party, in a social setting, because we know everybody lies. And the story that someone's telling at a party, they're guaranteed they're going to be embellishing it to make it really interesting.
Yeah,
Or they're
exactly.
telling stories to fit in. That's fine. But as far as the facial features go, never turn that off.
No,
Because if I can look at you and know that I can then talk to you in the way that you want to be spoken to, you're going to enjoy my company more, and I'm going to enjoy your company more.
that's right. That's right. No, it's interesting. I mean, I wrote an article about this a little while ago, and I said, you know, even sort of in my early teenage years and that, when you don't have half the world experience and life experience that I do now, I didn't realize it at the time fully until years later, but I've generally been like pretty good on sort of working out what people are like very early on. Like it doesn't happen with everybody. Like there's a lot of people where you don't really get a reading of them, but there are a lot of people, and I get a distinct impression of them very early on. And you kind of, at first you train yourself to say, oh, you know, you're judging them too early, or don't do that. But time and time again, it turns out that who they actually are, when you get to know them a bit better, is pretty much bang on what I initially thought of them.
That's it. Well, see, when I'm talking to people, I go, look, I'm not teaching you something you didn't already know. Every child has the skill, unless they've got, you know, some conditions where they can't read the facial features or the expressions. But every child is perfect at this. To your audience, I've asked this question. If you have children, have they pushed you right to the edge but not pushed you over the edge? And how many times do they do that? They just know how far to go because they're reading you all the time.
That's it.
But it's like anything that we don't repeatedly do. If we stop riding a push bike, we find it pretty nervous when we get back on. We're shaky and everything else, and might fall off a couple of times. But once we've been on it a bit, we've picked it up again. So you already had the skill, but you got involved in studies, in games, you know, chasing boys, chasing girls, all the other activities that come into our life. And while we're doing that, we're not working that muscle of reading people. And so it atrophies. All I do, I'm just nothing more than a personal trainer that helps you to realize what you already knew. Because as you said, you looked at somebody, they've said everything that sounds perfect, but you've had that gut feeling something was wrong. And I guarantee that there's only two reasons that you would have picked it up. One, that yes, that you picked up the non-verbals. So some of those skills that are, you know, from childhood are still there. Or the other one is that they've reminded you of somebody else who's done the wrong thing by you in the past, and you don't trust them.
That's
Well,
it. Yeah.
by having my skills, you just remove that doubt.
That's it. That's it. I find that the more time goes on, the more I see people who just remind me of somebody else that I've known, and it's like, oh, that person reminds me of so and so, and it can just be the way that they look or something, which I find interesting. But it's not always. It's not. I should stress, it hasn't always been bad vibes. Indeed, a lot of the times it's not necessarily a negative or positive. It's just I get the impression this person has this kind of personality type. And it's very interesting because a lot of it, we think it is just intangible or just a hunch, but when you really break it down, as you would well know, there's an actual science to it. But I mean, based on everything, you know, your life experience up to this point, I'm curious, Alan, if there's a standout lesson that you've learned along the way on a personal and a professional level, what would you say that is?
Well, there's a couple actually. When it comes down to it, you've heard, I've been involved in all these different modalities. I've been in just about every industry you can think of. I've worked in those. The most important thing you'll ever learn is the next thing you learn after you think you know everything. So the first thing is always have an open mind, and always, you know, if you hear something that doesn't, you know, you think, well, you know, does that really work? Ask the person how it works. Go with an inquisitive mind. Always protect yourself so you don't get conned, but at the same time, go with an inquisitive mind. But especially now, while we're in this coronavirus situation, everything else, the one that I've pretty much lived by most of my life has been that what you do for yourself dies with you, but what you do for others and for the world isn't always will be eternal. The people who are building their relationships now and looking after each other, and I don't mean just giving their services away, but of course they've got to live as well. You know, build the relationships with the clients because they're the ones that are going to come out the other side. They'll fare better in the middle of the virus. Once we come out the other side and the economy reverses or comes back, it starts to come back, they're the ones that will get their business out there faster. and they will
That's
grow
it.
faster. The ones that will disappear are the ones that have just tried to manage things all the time. You know, I hate the term manager because they look after the resources. It's, you know, they push those around, but people are your assets. And the leader leads their people, treats them as an asset, helps them to feel like they belong, that they contribute, and all the rest of it. And that person, then their staff, take that role on and want to make sure the business succeeds, not just get their pay.
That's the way. No, I think that's quite timely as well. And as we discussed the other week when we sat down about the importance right now of people planning and thinking about not just, you know, what's going to get them through the next couple of months, but thinking about the next year, the next 5 years, and thinking bigger in terms of that. So I think that's
That's
definitely
it.
timely advice there. But you touched on people in business, and I'm just curious. If someone's starting a business, Alan, what would you say is the most important piece of advice that you'd offer them? Like, what should they be keeping in mind, do you think, regardless of, regardless of any pandemics going around or the state of the financial market? What do you think is a core principle that they should keep in mind?
Just remember that if they're going into business to business or business to customer, at the end of the day, every transaction is human to human.
Hmm.
We've just had Bill Gates saying that a question he wouldn't have asked himself back in the Microsoft days, but he does ask himself now is, what are my business relationships like? Am I cultivating those? Are they growing? But even he's got it wrong. There is no such thing as a business relationship. Businesses don't talk to each other. It's somebody in the business that talks to somebody else in the other business. That's human to human.
That's it.
So every relationship in life is a personal relationship. It's not a business relationship. So remember that the people that you're talking to, building that relationship is the most important thing. If you put a concrete slab on the ground and you start putting a building on it, but you haven't anchored the concrete slab, sooner or later that building's going to crumble and fall. But if you put the footings down deep, and that's your relationships, you put those deep into the ground, they weather the tough times, and they're ones that really take you forward. So my always to everybody, regardless of where you do your training, start working on your relationship. Start looking at, well, how do I help that other person achieve what they want to achieve? How do I take my why of what I do to match their pain point? How do I deliver to them? Put your focus on the client, and you'll always then deliver to them, and you'll always have a great relationship with them, and they'll always keep coming back.
That's it. No, it's interesting because I find that you're right in terms of business relationships. I don't think we even need to put the word business in front of it. Like so many of the same principles that just undermine typical, that underscore typical human relationships, it applies to business as well. And I
That's it.
spoke about this again more recently, just that, you know, you think about the people who've gone the distance in your life. Maybe it's a spouse or old friends of yours or that sort of thing. And that relationship didn't just happen overnight. That was cultivated because you put more trust in the other person, and in return they invested more in you back. And it's
That's it.
exactly the same thing when you're going about business, and especially at this time you've got people that are just sort of they're thinking wrong, I think, because they're just looking to I'm going to make a quick sale. And it's exactly the same thing as sort of the one night stand principle. Like, you could get something quickly, but
Exactly. Yeah.
are you gonna,
Mm.
it's one thing to get your foot in the door, but it's another thing to, as I heard someone say, it's another thing to have both feet in the door and then keep them there.
Mm.
But yeah, you're right. It's exactly the same principle when it comes to business relationships. But I'm just curious, Alan, why should people be contacting you? Like, what reasons, why should people be giving you a call?
Well, I don't just promote my business as well. All the networking I do, I'm always looking at the people around me. So when a client comes to me or a person comes to me and says, "Look, I need to get some help," and I go, "Okay, well, tell me about your business. Let's see where the issues are." And I'll look at it and go, "Right, well, they're going to need to be able to build their relationships, but they may have another need somewhere else right now.
Hmm.
I'll put them with somebody that I know and trust, that I've had a relationship with, that I know that they can really provide, and then put them together so that that person gets to their business to a better point. And when they're ready, then for me, I'll come back in. So
Yeah,
it's always, if you look after everybody else, you're always front of mind to them. I don't advertise other than through the people that I work with, the referrals that come through. I get people calling me 3 or 4 years later saying, "Oh, they were talking to somebody," and I'm trying to scratch my head. Who was that? Because it's so far back in the past, I've dealt with them. And they say, "Oh, you've got to talk to Alan." So But if, what it comes down to, if they want to get those foundations right in their business to mean that they can put the slab down, put the rest of their business on top of it, and they want to know how to do that, they can come to me. So,
Yeah.
and I'll have a talk about that. But it's everything from master courses to very simple courses for individuals, teams, or whatever. So, but in my case is, what does the person need the most? And then direct them to whether my lower courses or whether it be somebody else outside. Get them there first of all, help them build their business. Because if you do it that way with integrity, people remember it. Other people are talking about it. And we know that if you advertise, about 7% of people listen to the ads. But if somebody else is talking about you, about 80% listen
That's
to
it.
it. So you better make sure the people who are talking about you are talking about you in the right way.
Yeah, that's it. Nothing. Yeah, yeah. Few things sell like social proof, don't they?
That's it.
And yeah, you're exactly right. It's been funny with me as well. I've had people, contacts that I met years ago, and then I'll have somebody call me and they'll say, "Oh, so and so mentioned you." I'll be like, "Oh man, there's a name that I haven't spoken to in a while." And so it's just funny how the referrals really are, and social proof is really the gift that just keeps on
Mm.
giving like that.
That's it. Well, so I did a profile for a lady about 9 years ago, going on
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago now, for her son who was 6 years old at the time, has
Mm-hmm.
Asperger's. School didn't want him, after school's care didn't want him. I did that profile, and then each year after that, she did a testimonial video for me. She's still doing them today. In fact, I
Wow.
was on a Facebook Live with her last night with a couple of other people talking about homeschooling and how to work through that, especially if you're a business person, you're trying to
Mm,
work from home as well. And and I had a birthday party a couple of weeks ago, and one of the other guys, because I run a thing called the Campfire Project, where
that's
we get
right. Yeah.
people to come and tell their stories. And in there, one of the guys had been ringing around, well, 3 or 4 continents actually. It was Canada, America, England, and Australia, getting on Zoom with everybody, had them all organised to sing happy birthday to me in different recorded sessions. On Saturday, I'm doing a Facebook Live with him on another instance, and I didn't know it was a setup. The same lady, Kylie's at my front door, knocked on the door. I went down to see her. She's in the back room of the Facebook Live, filming all of this. She's got a mask on. She's standing there. She made a cake for me, and she brought me a birthday present, which very interesting for the time period. It's a roll of toilet paper, so quite a bit of humour. And then we went back to the live, and so this is the thing that when you build relationships and you do the job right, you have those people around you forever.
That's
And
it.
that's
Yeah.
what I find. People become my clients, and very soon after that, they transition through to where they just, they're friends. And they're my people who are out there talking about me. So it saves a fortune on advertising.
Yeah. That's where the real value is, isn't it?
Mhm.
Now, I know that you have other calls to get to, Alan, so we won't keep you for ages. But just before we wrap up here, do you have any shout outs that you'd like to give?
Well, yeah, I've been involved with the BX network, which has been really, really great. One of the biggest issues is networking. You've got to be able to do it the right way.
Mm,
Now, back in the 90s, when I went to a lot of the Chamber of Commerce and those groups, I always ask people, why did you come here? Did you come here to sell? And all the hands would go up. And I go, who came here to buy? And no hands would go up. So I'd say you came here to talk at each other, not to each other. And so I'd been looking around for a long time, and I found a couple of groups, and one of them is a BX network. And they do it in the right way. It's about tell me about you. Tell me about how can I help you in your business? So we're not asking the other person their whole past. We're asking them how can we help them?
yeah.
And of course, they then reciprocate. So people are helping people build their business, finding referrals because they want to, not because they've got KPIs where they have to. And so that in that relation, there's a really strong relationship that's built.
That's
So,
it. That's it.
so
I
at
know.
the moment, they're online because all the face-to-face have stopped.
Yeah.
They're running large Zoom calls where people can get in to meet each other, breakout rooms where you get to meet each other as well. So I'd say to any business out there, if you want to build relationships, that's a damn good network to start with.
Absolutely, yeah, and I like the idea, as I keep saying, it's not about the people that are in the room; it's about the people that the people in the room know.
And
And
that's
again,
it.
that's just a great principle for life relationships as well. I mean, how many people met their spouse through friends, or how many people have met a friend sometimes through
Mm.
friends that they aren't even in contact with anymore. It's all about that. It's all about that big picture view to building relationships. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
And for
there's
everybody,
there's two other ones that I actually work with, and the one of them is the E-Women's Network.
mm-hmm,
So a women's network, but funny enough, they opened up in Australia, and I've become a founding member here in Australia, and they operate in a similar way. And the other one is a partnership club through Michael Griffiths.
okay,
So if you're looking at how to build your business, referral marketing, you need to talk to him.
there you go. Yeah, look, what I'll do for all of you watching at home, I'll put a link for the current BX online meetings in the just below the video when I post this up. But also, Alan, I'd love to put a link for you as well there. So anybody that wants to contact you can reach out and you can take the discussion to the next step. I'm sure you guys will have plenty to talk about. But
Excellent.
but yeah, like thanks for appearing today, Alan. I did want to catch up with you again after our conversation the other week, and um, there's some great stories there for people to take home as well. And like I said, I'll put the link there for anybody to reach out and contact you if they want to if they want to contact you via email or give you a buzz. But yeah, otherwise, thanks for coming along, Alan.
Thank you very much. And I'll give you another link, which is some free resources where they can have a bit of a play with reading people and get an experience of how it works.
Oh, fantastic. No, I'd love that. Yeah, include that as well. And that'll be even more for all of you watching. All right,
Excellent.
guys.
Thank you very much.
Sitting at your screens or maybe even watching this on your phone, can you all give a round of applause for Alan? And again, I'm sure Alan will be feeling the love right now. But no, thanks for coming along this morning, Alan. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Catch ya.
Bye-bye.